Welcome to WireWheel's Privacy Roll-Up, a weekly look at what's happening in the news or the world of privacy with our CPO, Rick Buck. Hi, Rick. You ready to talk about privacy and what's happening today?
I am indeed on this fine final day of September in 2021. It's hard to believe we are knocking on the door of October.
Absolutely. It just flies by. So sounds like it's really heating up with the feds, lately. As you've always been predicting, things have heated up at that level. But what I'm seeing is two things. So let's talk about two things today. First and foremost, I'm seeing that there's been a Senate committee hearing that happened yesterday, which examined how to better safeguard consumer privacy rights. Give us some details on that.
Yeah, so let's start there. A couple things. One, I'm not sure yet we have bipartisan kumbaya happening on the Hill. But the good news is that both the Democrats and the Republicans are talking about privacy. They're talking about it in the Senate. They're talking about it at the FTC. They're talking about it even on the state level. And so, as many of our weekly updates have focused on privacy legislation, oftentimes it rolls back to what's happening on the Hill. And so let's talk a little bit more about that. So yesterday, September 29th, Senator Cantwell, the Democrat from the state of Washington, she is the chair of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, had a hearing on protecting consumer privacy. And the focus of that hearing was to discuss important and emerging issues around privacy and security that include, in general, how do we better safeguard consumer rights? How do we better equip the FTC by way of creating a new privacy bureau? Well, how are we thinking at a federal level, excuse me, about the action and the activity that's been happening at the state level? And does that ultimately impact or influence the need for a federal law? And would that federal law be preemptive? And would that federal law have a private right of action? What's the impact of what the tech industry is doing from their perspective on attacking privacy by way of technology or protocols that they're putting in their platforms? And then contemplating things like China and their new privacy laws, and what that actually means and what the implications are. So a lot of interesting topics for them to discuss. Right. That being said, the witnesses that are presenting in this hearing are a who's who of the privacy giants in our world. We have Maureen Althusen, who is a former chair of the FTC. We have David Fladek, who was a former commission Bureau of Consumer Protection at the FTC. We have Ashkan Sultani, who also was a former chief technologist at the FTC. And then we have Morgan Reed, who's the president of the App Association, all participating in these discussions in the hearing. So people who have spent a lot of time surrounded by a lot of really smart people, listening to business, listening to industry, listening to other government officials, being involved at the FTC at the very highest levels. As we get more to report on the outcome of the hearings, we'll talk deeper about that. But I'm excited to hear that there's news on that front. Some of the criticisms of these conversations, and not the conversations in particular, is some people are saying that why is it taking them 9 months to pull this together? Needless to say, between a normal change of guard between presidents takes up a lot of time, and I'm not sure anybody would describe this transition as normal. And so they've been preoccupied with that. The pandemic has certainly distracted everybody at every level of our lives. And so there's certainly been some probably two big factors in their getting to this topic. But nonetheless, they have gotten here. And so very excited to hear that people at that level are really thinking about what privacy means and how the rules are changing, how technology is changing,
Right.
and what it is we can do at a federal level to make sure that that we're doing all the right things.
Right. Hey, technology, as we all know, lightning speed, right? But the more and everything that I'm reading these days has a lot, and it's very centered around the new changes with the China laws coming out. So, I can definitely see that that was one of the top issues that were being discussed
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the committee. So, all right, great. So rolling still into, federal, it sounds like, the latest from the FTC is that they'll be driving future actions on privacy, data security, and one of my favorite topics, artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. So last week, the FTC had one of several meetings that they're going to be having and had their open commission meeting. And their focus right now is on privacy, data security, and AI. And as is no secret, as they've tipped their hat in advance and if they've said loud and clear, they are taking a really bullish approach about having an increased focus around enforcement and rulemaking, particularly as it relates to privacy and security and AI. And they're thinking about ways in which that they can have a heavy hand there. In last week's meeting, several changes were approved that will directly impact a lot of these moving parts, and I'll talk about a few of them.
Okay.
You had mentioned AI and machine learning. And as we think about that, a new resolution was introduced to allow FTC staff to investigate allegations around bias in algorithms and biometrics. And the reason why they want to do that is that as we've discussed on these roll-ups before, they want to be sure that as AI is becoming more prevalent and more ubiquitous in the way companies, whether for marketing purposes or for science purposes or for any other purpose that you might have an AI model use, is that those models are built on valid logic and that they're not biased, and that the results that occur, that the decisions that are being made as a result of those models are not negatively impacting consumers or individual people.
Right.
And so again, a resolution was passed to allow the FTC to have more oversight on that. As it relates to children, a resolution was introduced to address now at children under 18 years old. This is an interesting resolution because we have COPA, right, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
Right.
But COPA deals with kids 13 and under. And so, I think for a while now, certain people have argued that COPA should go deeper and that it should address a broader audience of minors. And I think the FTC is starting to think that makes a lot of sense and is leaning in that direction. And now we'll be investigating things for minors under the age of 18.
Well, that in itself to me is very interesting, especially when you look at, let's just say, high schoolers, right? And probably younger than that, but all of their activities, especially online and with a lot of the apps and the interaction. So that's something really interesting to watch. I think that there definitely should be protections, but it'd be interesting.
Very interesting to watch. And you know what, as smart as I thought I was at 18, I will misquote Mark Twain, but he has a famous quote that says something to the effect of, when I was 18, I couldn't believe how dumb my dad was. And then by the time I was 21, I couldn't believe how much he had learned, right? So, all kidding aside, it's important to expand that reach and make sure that minors are not being taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
And then one other noteworthy resolution that was introduced was on or around deceptive and manipulative conduct on the internet. Justin's talked about this. We've had this as a subject on some of our spokes, talking about dark patterns on the internet. Dark patterns, for people that don't know, are design elements and websites that are meant to be deceptive or coercive or get people to do things that they might not necessarily know what they're getting into and have potentially harmful outcomes.
Right.
And so FTC again is spending a lot more time in directing its attention at addressing those issues as well. So I think this is good. These are all first steps. With any luck, we'll find out by the end of today if the federal government is going back to work tomorrow, and if the budget was passed for the allocations bill. If the allocations bill does see the day of light, the FTC will be, as we talked about last week, will be receiving $1 billion over the next 10 years, and they'll be able to throw a lot of money and attention at things like this. While the things that I've talked about today are really technical in their nature, really what they're doing is laying down the foundation again for them to have more oversight and to have more influence over the laws that exist and the enforcement of those laws. So we'll see where that goes. Now, all that being said, not all the commissioners have the same viewpoint on this. So there'll be great deliberation on the right way to approach this. They're all smart people. They're all focused on doing the right thing. And I'm excited to hear at the end of the day how this all works out.
Yeah, it's definitely like to be continued, right?
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, as always, thank you so much for your insights in terms of the latest when it comes to privacy news. And I'd like for our audience to stay tuned. We'll keep you informed about the latest in these topics. So tune in each week to hear about them. And thank you again, viewers. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at marketing@wirewheel.io, and we'll get back to you right away. You can also like us or actually look at the description below and subscribe to WireWheel's YouTube channel. Thank you again. And thank you, Rick, for your time. This has been great as always.
Always my great pleasure to do this with you, Janine. And thank you again to all you folks that continue to tune in to listen to this every week. See you next week.
Thanks.